Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to COVID-19, the Orthopaedic Response. I am Stefano Bini, the chair of the Digital Orthopedics Conference San Francisco. I'm also professor of orthopedic surgery at the University of California, San Francisco, with whom we are co-hosting this podcast. We're also joined by the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons as a global convener to address and rapidly respond to the dramatic changes to healthcare, patients, and our communities that we're seeing as a result of the COVID pandemic. We're grateful to have a global audience joining us for this discussion. And I'm super pleased to welcome Gianfranco DiMaira, il grande Gianfranco DiMaira, as we like to say, he's a senior partner and vice president at BTS. He's managing director of BTS Italy, and you may ask, who is BTS? So BTS is a global consulting firm which accelerates and improves strategic alignment and execution for business simulation. So welcome, Gianfranco. Now, the reason we're here is because you guys are in Milan and because you are an expert in understanding how we drive change and how we lead through change. So you're going to talk to us a little bit about what you've seen. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, Stefano, and thank you very much for hosting me. And I'm very pleased to be here in your conference. It seems to be a great conference, actually, with a lot of attendees. So I'm very happy. Stefano, I'd like to make a short disclaimer, a little disclaimer before starting. Actually, I have two. This is not my native language, as you know, and I am pretty confident with English, but it's not as fluent as it would be in my mother tongue. So apologies for that. Second thing is, I am not an orthopedist, as you said. I am not a doctor. So I'm looking at it from another angle. And indeed, one of the angles which I'm looking at it is definitely as a consultant, a leadership consultant and a strategy execution consultant, but also because of having been in the epicenter of the COVID-19 breakout in Milan and a little bit forerunner or front runner before many other countries after our Asian colleagues. So,
and just real quick, there's been some concern about echo. You wouldn't have a pair of headsets. I think the room is echoey. Do you have a microphone we can borrow? We tested it before, but it doesn't seem working. And while you're looking for that, I want to show I did something very special for those of you very attentive. I changed the picture on the wall behind me for an old map of our native country, Italy, that goes back quite a bit. You can see that they didn't quite have the proportions right back then. Sardinia, either that or it was a Sardinian who did the map. Very good, great. So let's see if this works a little better once you plugged in. Let's see how that works. Oh no, actually I can't hear you. I think your microphone is still on the end.
And I'm sorry for that, Stefano, but I think
we'll just go ahead. It was worth a try. Great. Why don't we get started? And I will make your PowerPoint large, and I'm sure we can handle the echo a little bit. Okay, here we go.
Okay. So, Stefano, as I was saying, I'm looking at it from this angle as a consultant. And as you were saying, this is the only slide I'd like to say about how we look at it when we look at it from our perspective with corporate leadership. And what we try to do is we look at how to help companies and organizations go through change and adapting to change and execute strategies or execute different strategies in a different way.
Right.
And as we look at it from a people perspective, what we believe is that an effective change or execution goes through three things, which are alignment, mindset, and capabilities. Now, what we mean with that is alignment is we all understand why, what, and how we are going in a different direction or in a certain direction. The mindset is people understanding and believing and wanting to go for that change and having that sense of urgency to go for that change. And then the capabilities is once the other two aspects are in place, do I have the right tool set or toolkit to act accordingly, to execute accordingly? So this is just a disclaimer to say we look at it from this angle and not from a medical angle, okay?
Correct. Now, on the other hand, we always talk, and DOCSF has always had this strong leadership component. We understand that technology is important, but you have to lead the change through it. And whether you're trying to deploy new digital health tools in the context of COVID and telehealth, or whether you're trying to manage any other aspect of leadership, these tools you're about to show us are really helpful, and we've always integrated them into the DOCSF conference.
Great. Now, for many of you, this picture may be well known. For many others, this picture may not be well known. This is Piazza Duomo of Milan. This is the main square of Milan, and I'd like you to, kind of bring you into the story with this square, actually starting from the square. In any moment in time during the day, in any day of the year, this square would be crowded with thousands of people. You would be seeing thousands of people in any moment of time. Now, in this moment, now apart from being 9:30 in the afternoon, in the evening here in Milan, but in every day since 6 weeks, this square, this is a little bit what you would see in the square, full emptiness. Now, in my whole life, Stefano and all the attendees, I have never experienced anything like what is happening in the last 6 weeks, never. And what we actually decided to do with our global leadership, as we were in the epicenter of the crisis before many other countries, and we were expecting many other countries to get into the crisis, we decided to pull together some of the lessons learned from Milan and to make them available for other leaders who would be going through that crisis.
This will be super valuable.
And so in a record time, we set up, actually, we prepared a program, and I'll try to get you through a little bit of some of the learnings and some of the insights that we got and that we try to share with our customers, but customers around the world, of what we can do in order to successfully, or let's say, be more successful in leading through the crisis of the COVID-19 crisis. So to bring you a little bit actually into the spirit of what has happened, I'll show you a little bit of this video. I know that many of you maybe are not able to hear the audio, sorry. But this happened actually a few weeks already in the lockdown of the country. And this was a little bit a way of sensing experiencing the sense of community and showing the sense of community of the Italian people and the positive spirit of wanting to go through the crisis. It's only a few seconds.
It was a very powerful moment. It inspired a lot of people watching from away, from elsewhere, showing the resilience of the population.
Well, I must tell you, it has been, and it still is. Today we are in our 6th week, for most of us, in our 6th week of full confinement and working from home. We are not even allowed to go out for a walk with our kids. If you're lucky, like myself, I have a big garden. If you're unlucky, like most of the people, you're just sitting in a flat and you're sitting there since 6 weeks working from home, right? So that resilience is really not an easy thing that, to come up with, but we try to be positive. So let me bring you a little bit and walk you through a little bit of the timeline of the events, what has happened in these weeks, or at least in the first weeks. And I'll try to give that also with a sense of stages, because those stages are incrementally more complex in the resilience of people and in the challenges for the people. So in February 21st, we had our first cases that became evident. And already on Sunday, the 23rd, the government decided to shut down 11 towns, 10 in Lombardy and 1 in Veneto, completely shut down. So people started understanding something particular and special was happening. We all knew about what had happened in China, but we started understanding that, my God, this is probably going to happen in Italy as well. But still, it was confined in one region, in one area. Soon after less than a week or less than 10 days, all schools and universities were closed. After another few days, the whole of Lombardy and 14 other provinces in the north of Italy are in full lockdown. And in another 2 days, the whole of Italy is put under lockdown, and all shops and services are closed, except very essential services, grocery, pharmacies, drugstores, and very few others. In another 10 days, we get into further restrictions, and even all manufacturing plants, everything that is not strategic, is put under lockdown. And that's the 3rd stage. And the final stage, actually, and unfortunately, we are not there yet, but we have been looking at what has happened with our colleagues and clients in China. there is another moment which is going to be, or another phase which is going to be quite critical, is how are we going to get out of this crisis, right? And when things are going to run more or less smoothly, what is going to happen, right? Now, the approach we have in BTS is we believe that leadership is relentlessly contextual. So what we try to do is understand what are the pivotal moments that leaders are faced and challenged with, and what do great leaders do during those pivotal moments. And we try to isolate some of those pivotal moments for leading in a moment of crisis, and we try to make them available for leaders around the globe. So basically, we identified, there are many more, but we identified 5 pivotal moments. The first one, and that follows the stages, is confusion. People start understanding there's chaos. What is going to happen? What do I have to do? Do I work from home? Do I go in the office? So as a leader, you want to communicate, and you need to communicate to your people, and you want to say things, but you really still don't know what is going to happen. So what do you do there? First moment. Second moment is you start having clear instructions. You're going to work from home. This is changing the way of working. Although many of us are used to working from home, but one thing is working, one day a week from home, or one day every now and then from home. Another day is working every single day from home, with both parents there, maybe with kids around, with completely different cadences and structures and processes, right? Then the crisis goes on, and actually you start realizing that this is longer than you would expect, and you're working actually longer hours than you were expecting, and actually the business is completely disrupted, and tensions start arising, and it seems like you're spinning, on empty, really. How do you as a leader deal with those frustrations with your people? Then, another one is, this is going on for several weeks, and people start to go in that certain kind of state, mental state, that we call meltdown. You must have been hearing about the meltdown, right? Now, how do you start dealing with your team members, your people that are getting into that kind of meltdowns? And maybe, in the beginning, you're seeing the things are in the news, but as time goes by, you feel that COVID is getting around you, right? And I'm sorry to be, to put it dramatic, but in the beginning, you read it in the newspapers alone, or you see it in the news. After weeks, maybe a friend, a colleague, a relative is directly or indirectly impacted. So things, put them all together, they create a little bit of pressure, right? And then as we get out of, and as we suspect we will get out of this crisis sooner or later, how do we get into the business again? With what kind of mindset, and how do we get into our business relationship that we are going to deal with? What kind of mindset?
So I just want to interject. This is phenomenal. And your Italian and your English is fantastic, by the way. But I want to say that for us, it's the patient. It's the patient who may not be comfortable committing to a procedure that may put them further out of work for a period of time. It may actually that we may not even have a huge resurgence. We're concerned about a resurgence of work to be done at the end of this crisis. Your point is that in our world, these folks may not be quite ready to commit to a prolonged recovery period. Just wanted to frame that discussion because this is really fantastic.
And Stefano, I'm sure that some of these insights are useful for you and your community and the DOCSF community around, because many of the challenges, you may frame them in another way, but they're going to be challenges for the medical system, but as well for as you deal with patients, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Great points you're making. Thank you.
So let me go on. So basically what we did in record time, we created this program, and what we tried to understand by talking to our customers and clients was, what do great leaders do in these moments of crisis? And what can we learn from that? And the second thing is, how as a leader can I gain empathy for what our people feel and practice ways to serve them better? This is what we tried to distill, in the program. And how did we do that? We did that with, actually, I'll get to that in a moment. We tried to identify the core motivations and needs in a moment of crisis. And we identified there are three main motivations and needs in a moment of crisis. A need for empowerment. People need to feel more in control of what happens to me and around me. People feel the need, they have the need to add value and to be constructive and to have the capabilities to act in that moment of crisis. And finally, the need of community is super strong in that moment of crisis, more than it is before. And this is an incredible learning that we have. You know, when we're all in conference call all the time, you know, Zooming and Zoom and whatever, whenever now we are with our colleagues, you know, we dedicate some time just, you know, for a chat. We really feel, you know, happy to see our colleagues now, because we're connecting with each other much more than before, right? And that is happening to all leaders in all corporate world, and most likely this is happening to you and your community as well, or this is going to happen, unfortunately, in this moment of crisis to you as well. So basically, what we did, this slide is maybe a little bit, you know, too much wordings, but I'll try to talk it over. We created a program, a webinar, a 120 minutes webinar, where people, where participants would be experiencing what it means to lead through those pivotal moments, and how to deal with those challenges and situations, and what kind of choices are the best choices that you should make as a leader in those moments.
I'm going to interrupt for a second because I'd like for you to define what a simulation is. I've been fortunate enough to be familiar with it, but what do you mean by simulation? What happens during a simulation?
So it's unfortunate, but you know, because of time constraint, I cannot show you, and I could not share, of course, how it works. But just imagine that we are designing a storyline, and we are making people to get into scenarios, which are those pivotal moments that we discussed before, and get them a feel of what is happening in those moments, and then they're confronted with different options and choices and trade-offs. And they're measured with different impacts, actually, and impacts and metrics, leadership index, employee engagement, productivity, sustainability of the business, and whatever kind of choice that you would be making, it has an impact on some areas more than others. Think of it a little bit like, you know, the flight simulator. I think the flight simulator is the best analogy. A flight simulator, it's a learning and training tool for pilots, not only for ourselves with a PlayStation or whatever kind of device we're using, but for pilots, it's a very it's a regular way of practicing the right behaviors in any kind of moment, which can be a moment of emergency or crisis, or whatever kind of unknown moment. So we have leveraged that kind of methodology for leadership as well. So we put our leaders, or leaders from our customers, in the situations that are challenging, and we make them practice what are the best choices, the best decisions they can take and they can make in those moments.
So just to clarify, so what I heard you say is you put these leaders into a situation, they have to make choices. Based on their choices, they see an outcome. They then react to that outcome, make more choices. And so they can see what happens based on what decisions they make, but then they can repeat it and make different decisions and virtually experience a cycle so that they're ready for the decision making when it actually happens, because they've experienced it already. That's the whole idea of simulation, right? That's flying a plane.
That's right. That's right, Stefano. And think of it from this practice perspective, and think of it from this perspective of looking already to a future state and preparing for a future state. Fantastic. Or a possible state, right? And that is very powerful. That is the way. That is one of the distinctive methodologies that we use in BTS. And the name BTS comes actually from the original name was Business Training Simulations, and then Business Training Solutions, and then it's just plain BTS. Now, if you allow me, I'll just continue, Stefano. Yeah. So basically, the experience is not self-paced, but it's guided and led by a facilitator or a professional coach, so that after every of those choices and feedbacks that are provided by the simulation, there is moments of insights and know-hows that are delivered together with tools, leaders, to be able to apply those learnings back immediately and as fast as possible to their ordinary life as go-dos, as we call them, right? I'll try, Stefano, and for everybody here, I'll try to get you maybe a little bit of insights about some of those tools, and hopefully that those can be useful for you and for your colleagues as well, if that's fine for you. So if we recall, these are 5 of those moments that they would be simulating in a, of course, with a storyline, and you know, this is just a very short outline of it. And think of it that every one of those has some learning points. So in the first moment, remember, you're in chaos. You just got known that you are going to be in some kind of strange situation with the COVID, and your people are confused. What do you do? One of the outcomes is don't create, or one of the learnings is don't create false hope, and help people to lead in uncertainty. That is one important thing that we want to have with our leaders, or for leaders to be effective. What typically happens in any kind of state of our life is we typically have some things that we feel are under control, the zone of certainties, and some things that we are completely powerless against. I don't know if the fact that OPEC is raising prices of the oil or decreasing, I mean, we don't have any control of that. Now, what happens in a crisis like this is that the zone of powerlessness increases dramatically. So what we try to help leaders, and what we try to help leaders to do with the simulation, for example, is to enlarge the zone of uncertainty and to teach them how to lead in it, to be more comfortable with it. That is one insight that we try to give, or one learning that we try to give to people. The other one, in moment number 1, is, I don't know if you know the story about the research that was conducted by Harvard some time ago. They asked people if they would find $20, would they prefer to find $20 at one, or $10 one day and $10 the other day? And most of the people said the second one. And as an opposite, if they would lose $20, would they prefer losing $20 all at once, or $10 one day and $10 the other day? And the answer there was the opposite, all at once. So another important thing in this first moment is how you communicate the information and the news to your people. Communicate as much as possible the bad news in a transparent way all at once. And because of the way our brain works and frames events into stories, communicate good news over time, and better yet, try to create a sense of empowerment with good news over time. So what can you do? For example, how can you help your customers? That was for our environment. How could as a leader, can you help your customers move solutions from face-to-face to virtual to digital, or whatever kind of hook you may have, your values, whatever it is, but try to hook some positive news there. I'm speeding up because I see that we are a little bit, maybe, I don't know if we're late or not, but I'll try to get it a little bit fast. As a leader, our role is to help people to feel able to lead in uncertainty. That is one learning and insight that people started experiencing in this first moment. Then moments 2 and 3 is things are locked down, and you have to help people to understand the importance of connection and to empathize with the frustrations and the emotions that people feel in the anxiety of the crisis. That was another takeaway that we learned that great leaders were doing in our customers' environment. What is needed for that? People need, what typically breaks relationships is how people see each other, what they hear from each other, and what they say to each other. In a moment as this as a crisis, people need to be seen. And it is much more difficult to be seen in a moment of isolation or in a situation of isolation compared to a moment of proximity. And tendency of leaders is to give guidance, to mentor, to give instructions, so to speak. But what people really need in a moment of crisis is to be seen, to be heard, and less to be spoken on. So create connection so that people don't stay isolated. create a lot of connection. And I think, Stefano, these are takeaways for any kind of operator, even medical operators, not only leaders in corporate world. So,
I'm going to ask you a quick question there. Just honestly, a very good question. You can answer yes or no. Are you talking, when you see seeing, are you talking that people want to see their leader, or they want to be seen by their leader? Who are they being seen by?
They want to be seen by the leader. So if I'm an operator, I'm having a problem, I want my leader to be close, even if it is not face to face, but I need him to look at me and to just listen to me, and to be comfortable to be with me, not just to giving me instructions on what to do and how we be rational, etc., etc., etc. Okay.
Thank you.
Then, as we're saying, we are 4 or 5 weeks into the crisis. People start getting into meltdowns. You know the story of trigger events: trigger 1, trigger 2, trigger 3, trigger 4. They create stories in the heads of people, and people start going into crisis, frustration, anxiety, meltdowns. Those are the moments where you want to recognize emotions. And the learning point there is, leaders, especially leaders in corporate business, in corporate world, are not comfortable with dealing with emotions. They're comfortable with procedures, processes, instructions, leading, as tough people. All right. Now, the teams, they are feeling a lot of frustrations. What you want to do there is we learn from our clients, and we teach this. Actually, this is actually a methodology that our coaches use. We teach them to be comfortable with the emotions, or actually to deal firsthand with the emotions that the people are feeling. What are the issues? Dig into the issues, because by uncovering the emotions, or making people feel comfortable with their expressing the emotions, you very often, as a leader, you understand what are the deep issues around the problem of a person, which is very different from another one, as everybody is facing different situations. From any home, it's a different situation. Then you start understanding what are the options, and then you start making choices. But firsthand, make yourself comfortable with dealing with emotions, and become resourceful by applying this ETC sequence. I know this is going very fast, but I wanted to share with you just a few tools. And then the last one is, as we are stepping out of the crisis, and this we learned from our Chinese colleagues who are stepping out of the crisis. I just got a video this week from our colleagues back in the office, and they were so happy being back in the office. So we hope this is going to continue this way. The world is going to be very different than before. We all are aware of that. But that means we also have to change the way we are going to think and talk and act with our customers, or whatever is our stakeholders, our patients, whatever it is. So I don't know if you know this one. If you look at this picture, I think everybody of you, Stefano, what do you see there?
Oh, sorry, ice cream.
Ice cream, exactly. So this is, in neurosciences, this is the way our brain works, right? We take shortcuts, and that's helpful, because shortcuts help you to go faster in your decision making. The shortcuts is the way our brain creates patterns of certainty in decision making, right? Now, when we are young, think of it, this is drops of experiences that we make in our life. And we are, as children, we are very, very, very flexible to take things as they come, and to be very creative. As life goes on, we start creating what we call rivers of thinking, right? So we start being a little bit more constrained. And as those rivers of thinking, and we become more experienced, and we become, more, confident of how things go in life, this actually constrains us even more. So basically, as we come out of the crisis, we are all very confident that things are not going to be the same. This means that we have to rethink the way we act as a business, as an individual, as a person in our society, as a medical operator, as an orthopedist, whatever. But most likely, things will not be as before. So pulling it all back, remember, these were 3 of the core motivations that we identified in a moment of crisis. Now, this is a little bit, a recap of the learnings that we try to provide leaders. And actually, we're very happy because this week we started delivering those seminars around the world. We had our first seminars already in the US, in Australia, in Europe, and there, people are paying us a tribute for thanking us for giving them already kind of a fast forward of what is happening in the crisis. And that's it for me, Stefano. I hope I have not been too tedious for yourself and all of your attendees.
I think tedious is the wrong term. Everyone was riveted to their screen listening to your speech. I thought it was outstanding. I know I want to go and review it again because some of the graphics were so powerful. The whole question around the role of the leader in a time of crisis and how it's turned upside down was phenomenal. Let's talk a little bit more about the leader that's uncomfortable with the empathy side, the leader that's much more comfortable with numbers and spreadsheets and negotiating advantage against some other company, as opposed to turning around inwardly to their organization to speak and hear, probably most importantly, or feel like to be heard to their people. Tell us a bit more what you teach your leaders in that context.
So this is a little bit, that aspect of getting out of your comfort zone as a leader. I mean, think of it. And I'm dealing with corporate leaders. So most of those corporate leaders think of, that kind of image of the Gordon Gekko, successful people, I'm not going to cite any company, which is of course unfair, but think of, for example, the bankers, the bankers are, and I have huge respect for the bankers, but think of them, being very used to lead out of authority, out of, successful way of leading through their life. And then this happens. And the most important thing when this happens, Stefano, is take away that mask, take away all that certainty, and take away all that that comfort that you had from knowing your processes and your instructions and your spreadsheets and whatever, and getting into the understanding the feelings of the people and what they're facing in the moment that they're working, both from home, maybe 12 hours a day, in anxiety. Maybe some of the cousin or a nephew is in hospital in intensive care. Both husband and wife, they're working, one in the living room, the other one in the kitchen. Children around, they're super frustrated on conference calls in those conditions. It's not important to say things to people what they have to do. You have to get to the feeling of the people and understand what are they sensing. I'm not hearing you.
Sorry. Let's take that one step further. And you talked about a meltdown. So you're about 2 weeks ahead of us in the United States. And even in New York, it's still the 2 weeks into being locked.
I think it's even 3.
3 weeks ahead of us. So this is new. I don't think, and maybe I haven't been listening, but I have not heard of this concept that happens as it's completely obvious if you think about it. But there's a moment where we go into a meltdown mode, and then you move the way.
It may happen. It doesn't necessarily, but it may.
Yeah, and then what's the trick if you see that happening in your organization, your hospital system, in your group, and you want to address it as a leader? How would you do that? So
typically, what we would do is, you are the leader, and a person in your team is going into a meltdown. You would immediately go into the rational area, right, and say, "Hey, no, but look at this. I mean, the things are, and blah 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 blah," right? In that person, I mean, the way the trigger events happened for that person created a story, which is of course self-sustaining and is giving the confidence to that person that something is worse than what it really is. Now, before getting into the rational part, you first have to make that person vent their emotions, make that person feel confident in getting out of that anxiety zone first, okay, the frustration. So that's why we say the ETC, the emotions first. And typically, if if you help that person, if you step and dig into that a little bit, and you start understanding what that person is telling you, and you rehearse or you speak it back to that person, what you're hearing, perhaps that person autonomously understands that the way you're framing it is probably different than the way he or she has really framed it in that trigger, with those triggers. And only in that moment, Stefano, only in that moment, you're muted, only in that moment, what happens is the person starts really rationally understanding that he or she has more choices that he or she was thinking of.
No,
so
I think that's
this is a deep, this is a deep
very,
process.
very helpful.
Yeah,
very helpful. Sorry. So last 3 minutes is I want to talk about the concept you brought back, which I thought was very interesting. That the assumption is that when a lot of people have this in their mindset, I think, and maybe I count myself in that group until I heard you talk, that when this is all over, it's kind of back to a version of normal. Whenever I say nothing's going to be normal, the assumption often is we have to catch up. But your point is, no, not so fast. This environment may be not ready to return to normalcy because of various issues relative to their ability to be, they don't feel ready for normal. Can you talk to that a bit more?
Okay, now I'm as a person, as an individual, as a leader for my organization as well, I wanted to make myself also a personal opinion, not only what the government says. So I've been, I have a responsibility for the people I lead in Italy. So I needed to research and I needed to understand what was going on. And you have very different researches and scenarios that are being identified and crafted at the moment. So I'm not a credible source, but we all agree that life probably will not be exactly the same as before. Now, how different, we don't know. But some scenarios depict that probably we have a weak chain in our society. We have some weak chains, and most likely, if you look in the last 10 years, we had 3 pandemics. This is the 3rd major one, actually the 4th major one. We had the SARS, the MERS, the other one, I don't remember how you call it in English, and then this one, COVID-19, in 10 years. And somebody is saying probably we have to live with more coming up in life. So who says that maybe we are not going to learn on maybe a little bit more of social distancing as a normal way of? Or who says that people are not more confident now with making even more teleconferences and working more from home? So many things in our work patterns, in our life patterns may be disrupted. Now, in any case, we are going to go after this crisis. The direct consequences of COVID is going to be most likely a world global recession. So that is not going to be very normal. But even though we're going to go into a normal way of living, most likely some things and perceptions are going to change and are changing already. That's what we are seeing here. And this is my little contribution.
Listen, Gianfranco, we are very grateful for your contribution. I found that to be an extremely instructive, thoughtful, extremely well positioned and put together segment that I think will be very useful to all of the people listening to this symposium, because no matter where they are in the world, the issue is fundamentally a human one, and what unites us as humans, we tend to behave similarly, and thus I believe that what you've taught us today is widely applicable, and I suspect that it'll be widely shared, even if people who may not be in leadership positions with their leaders. Please go and watch this video with Gianfranco. I think it's going to be really great. So with that, I want to thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. Very kind, and thank you for inviting me, Stefano. It's been a real pleasure. Now I'm going to open a bottle of wine, and my weekend is going to start, hopefully.
Arrivederci, Gianfranco. Grazie.
Andrà tutto bene. Everything will be okay. Ciao.
Hashtag. Ciao.
Hashtag. Ciao.